total insanity. What drove me to start the Boulevard in 1985, 1986 was the lack of opportunity for new and emerging theater artists, actors, etc. It was very difficult to find as an emerging or evolving theater artist or director the opportunity to work on a level of script or writing that was both challenging and intellectual and dealt with topics and subjects and values that perhaps I felt a connection with. You have to find and select material, scripts, the narrative that speaks to you spiritually, artistically, and in an aesthetic fashion. 30 years ago, there weren't companies doing pieces such as Bees and Honey Drown, or our next production, Clarence Darrow, one-man show about values and about the Constitution. A man who did not have to take steps and sacrifice fiscal security and popularity, but he did. That's part of the reason I wanted to form the Boulevard, is to have a voice artistically and aesthetically in our community that gave voice to not only that written word, but also then allowed opportunity for new and emerging returning artists. Well, I think honestly, if you want a very direct question and not rather a soundbite-like question, we did not have a very happy childhood. Our house was a very divided house. There was a lot of Sturm und Drang and a lot of drama, and not in the good sense. So as a child can learn how to escape. Sometimes they escape outside in possibly negative activities, or positive outside activities, the Boy Scouts, etc., other sports, that kind of thing. Or you can also escape inside by reading. And I was a fairly voracious reader as a child and read a great deal of children's literature, and also then even in high school started to read plays. Because when your outside reality doesn't meet what your goal is, you create an inside reality. And that is a means of survival tool for the child or for the young adult. But that's where the idea of story came from, because you can retreat in your mind and in your imagination and imaginary friends. And you can also create a totally different safe world and a refuge. You can create a refuge in your mind that is a safe place to go when things at home are not safe. The power of a story is tremendous because it can influence you in every direction, and we forget sometimes. We only think of the positive aspects of stories. There are many negative aspects of stories. Stories can keep you in your place. Well, that's just the way it's always been. Those stories, not just the written word, but also the family mythology. That's the story that we carry with our own family brothers and sisters. Stories can entertain. My mother had an incredible sense of humor, and she had an incredible sense of her own mythology and her own imagination. If I were to tell you the story of her life, you would understand why she had to create such an armor of sorts. But hopefully stories can keep us company. Life can be a very lonely place, and stories sometimes can keep us company for a little, maybe it's 2 hours. Maybe that's all some people have. That's why it's such I decry the state of popular movies today. Everything is about violence, only because it reflects our inner state, our value-driven state, or spiritual state, or one might say lack thereof. So instead of going for respite or to refresh yourself, as some might argue in the 40s and 50s movies did, or the 30s in the Great Depression, where you actually were able to escape how awful life was by watching 2 people sing and dance in chiffon skirts and top hat and tails. Now we see people killing each other and dismembering each other in every way possible. And violence is the new sex. They call it torture porn for a reason. That is reflective of how degraded our human spirit and our belief in our human spirit has become. Theater, sometimes, classic theater, sometimes, can enable and empower the belief in the possibility of change and the possibility of hope. Not always. but sometimes it can. The fact that you are assembling a group of strangers together in a room to share a story speaks well of the communal drive, of the tribal or pack mentality that together we need to come together to experience this theater, this theatrical event, this story, if you will. Attending popular movies is very disheartening. People come and go, they talk, they're on their cell phone. There's no communal occurrence. We're one of the last theaters in Milwaukee to really maintain some kind of structure. If you have children or pets or dogs particularly, you understand that they need that structure. I've had patrons come up and tell me, thank God that you don't allow food in the space. They go to the downtown theaters where now, of course, to make a buck and pay the mortgage, you can take drinks. All you hear is clink, 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 or candies, or cell phones. I'm trying very hard to fight that last pioneer battle about this is a sacred place. One could argue church is a sacred place. But church is a form of theater, and theater is a form of church. They're both communal activities, and on some and many levels, values are explored, reinforced, or possibly reinvented. Humor is one thing that is engaging. The sheer intimacy of our space, only 40 to 50 patrons per production depending upon the set needs and the cast size, are seated. So through no will or wish, you must be engaged when you're in such tight quarters. Hopefully, you are engaging your audience and your patrons by pre-selecting material that is invigorating, that is well written, well crafted, that speaks to the art of the spoken and written word. Hopefully, throughout intense and intrinsic rehearsal processes, you have polished that work so that you're telling the story to the full value and effect that you possibly can. That's the best engagement you can. Clarence Darrow celebrates the right of the individual to be respected, and yet the responsibility to respect the other individual, or one might say, love thy neighbor.